Kyiv was burning. The night sky turned red. Explosions echoed across the city. Within hours, videos from Ukraine's capital were spreading across social media and international news outlets. Most people focused on one thing: the explosions, the fires, the destruction, but military analysts were looking at something else entirely. They weren't asking what exploded. They were asking a different question: what launched it? And that's where the story becomes far more interesting. As more information emerged in the hours following the attack, it became increasingly clear that the real story wasn't the damage on the ground. It was the weapon behind it. The Kh-101, one of Russia's most advanced air-launched cruise missiles. And if large numbers of Kh-101s were indeed used during the operation, then one conclusion becomes difficult to avoid. Russia's strategic bomber force was involved. And when we talk about Russia's strategic bomber force, we're talking about one aircraft in particular, the Tu-95MS, a Cold War legend that refuses to disappear. An aircraft that first took to the skies decades ago. An aircraft many believed would eventually become obsolete. Yet somehow it remains one of the most important components of Russia's long-range strike capability. And that's what makes the strike on Kiev so fascinating. Because the real story didn't begin in Kyiv. It began hundreds, perhaps thousands of miles away, at Russian air bases where strategic bombers were preparing for another mission. At first glance, the Tu-95 looks like a relic from another era. 4 massive turboprop engines, 8 giant propellers, a distinctive silhouette that instantly evokes the Cold War. To someone unfamiliar with military aviation, it might seem outdated, even vulnerable, but that's exactly where many people misunderstand the aircraft. The Tu-95 didn't survive because of its age. It survived because of its mission, and that mission has never changed, delivering strategic firepower at extreme range. Over the years, Russia has continuously modernized the aircraft. Its avionics have been upgraded, its communication systems improved, its navigation capabilities enhanced. But the most important evolution wasn't inside the cockpit, it was hanging beneath the wings. Because when the Kh-101 entered service, the Tu-95 gained a new life. Suddenly, an aircraft designed during the Soviet era was capable of carrying one of the most sophisticated cruise missiles in the Russian arsenal. Think of it this way. It's like combining a battle-proven platform with a completely modern weapon system, and the result is remarkably effective. Today, the Tu-95 doesn't need to fly anywhere near enemy air defenses. It doesn't need to penetrate hostile airspace. It doesn't need to take the risks strategic bombers faced decades ago. It simply reaches a launch area, releases its missiles, turns around, and heads home. The rest of the mission belongs to the Kh-101. This is why NATO closely monitors Tu-95 activity, because whenever multiple bombers take off, military planners know something significant could follow. Not immediately, not even within the next hour, but eventually. And when cruise missiles begin appearing on radar screens, the reason becomes clear. Now we arrive at the centerpiece of the story, the Kh-101, because without this missile, the strike on Kiev likely wouldn't have generated the same level of international attention. The Kh-101 is not just another cruise missile. It was designed for one purpose, delivering precision strikes at extremely long distances, and that's what makes it so important. Imagine a bomber operating deep inside Russian territory, far from the front lines, far from immediate danger. That aircraft launches a missile, then turns back toward base. Meanwhile, the missile continues alone, flying hundreds of miles, sometimes much farther, navigating its programmed route, following terrain contours, remaining difficult to detect, moving steadily toward its target. This capability fundamentally changes the nature of long-range warfare. The bomber stays relatively secure. The target remains vulnerable. And when dozens of these missiles are launched in a coordinated operation, the challenge becomes even greater. Air defense systems are no longer dealing with a single threat. They're dealing with multiple threats arriving from different directions and at different times. This is where many analysts believe the Kiev strike became strategically significant. Because what the world witnessed wasn't simply another missile attack. It was a demonstration of capability. A demonstration that Russia can still integrate strategic bombers and modern long-range cruise missiles into a large-scale coordinated operation. And that reality attracted attention far beyond Ukraine. This brings us to perhaps the most important question. What was the operation really intended to achieve? Was it simply about hitting specific targets? Possibly. But many analysts believe there was another layer to it, because in modern warfare, how a weapon is used can be just as important as the damage it causes. When multiple Tu-95MS bombers take off, when large numbers of Kh-101 missiles are launched, when the operation dominates international headlines, a strategic message begins to emerge. A message directed toward Ukraine, a message directed toward Western governments, and a message directed toward military observers around the world. The message is straightforward. Russia's strategic bomber force remains operational. It remains capable of conducting large-scale missions. And it remains an important component of Russia's broader military strategy. This is why many analysts spent more time discussing the bombers and missiles than the explosions themselves. Because the explosions were merely the final result. The real story was the system behind them. The planning, the logistics, the coordination, and the ability to execute a complex long-range strike operation. Several days have passed since the strike, yet the discussion continues, and there's a reason for that. This story is bigger than Kiev, bigger than Ukraine, and in many ways, bigger than Russia. Because at its core, this is a story about modern warfare. Most people saw flames lighting up the night sky. Military analysts saw operational coordination. Most people saw explosions. Military analysts saw strategic capability. Most people saw a strike. Military analysts saw a message, and that message continues to fuel debate today. Because ultimately, the Kh-101 is more than just a missile, and the Tu-95 is more than just an old bomber. Together, they represent a larger reality. A reminder that in modern warfare, the age of a platform often matters less than the capability it delivers. As long as an aircraft can carry relevant weapons and perform its mission effectively, it can remain strategically valuable for decades. That may be the biggest reason the Kiev strike continues to attract attention. Because behind every explosion seen on camera was a carefully planned operation that highlighted how a Cold War-era strategic bomber can still play a major role in 21st century warfare. And as long as the Tu-95 continues carrying the Kh-101 into the sky, discussions about both are unlikely to end anytime soon.